And at this hour, the coffin carrying Queen Elizabeth II, bringing her to Buckingham Palace the last time. Every move during this period of mourning has drawn crowds by the thousands. You can see the pictures there now. The procession taking her to Buckingham Palace. The Queen will be placed in the center of the Bow Room. She'll remain there overnight. She will then be moved to lie in state at Westminster Hall. That will play out tomorrow. The Queen was flown back from Scotland by the Royal Air Force just a short time ago, and as she was leaving, the Guard of Honor giving her a final royal salute. Princess Anne, the Queen's only daughter, escorting her on that flight. It was yesterday in Scotland, the UK and the world witnessing her flag-draped coffin being driven down the Royal Mile for a service at St. Giles Cathedral. The moving image from the last 24 hours, her four children, King Charles, Princess Anne, Prince Andrew, and Prince Edward walking behind her. A huge crowd lining the route together in their shared silence, many standing and waiting for hours, many parents bringing their young children to tell them one day they paid their respects. Earlier today, King Charles and Queen Consort Camilla greeted by a cheering crowd in Belfast. During his tour of the United Kingdom, the royal couple shaking hands as they arrive at Hillsborough Castle, chanting, "God save the King." I believe that's what we call Nat Sound, the sound of people reacting to the Queen coming home there in London. Charles seen petting a corgi in some of the images of the last 24 hours just this morning. That corgi brought by someone in the crowd. The Queen, of course, famous for her love of corgis. As we watch the hearse pull into Buckingham Palace, a profoundly moving image. We know that London, of course, 5 hours ahead of us here in the east, 4 minutes past 8 o'clock there. You can hear the cheers welcoming the Queen home for the final time. Victoria Murphy, extraordinarily moving to see Queen Elizabeth II come home for the last time.
Incredibly moving to be here this evening, David, outside Buckingham Palace, and to see that state hearse with the Queen's coffin draped in the royal standard drive around the Queen Victoria Memorial. I think the symbolism of her coming back to Buckingham Palace, the official seat of the monarchy, one final time. And what was very striking was that there was, before she arrived, this incredible hush that just descended on the whole area here. There's been a hive of activity around Buckingham Palace for the past few days, but as we anticipated her arrival, it was so very quiet. And then, as you heard, as the hearse drove past there, cheers, claps from the crowd, getting the chance to see their Queen one final time.
I have to admit that we found that quite moving. We expected the silence, the somber nature of the moment, Victoria, but to hear the applause, the cheers, it simply reinforces the profound impact the Queen had for 70 years on the United Kingdom.
I think you're absolutely right, and those spontaneous claps and cheers clearly coming from the heart there. People have been moved to come here this evening and stand in the rain. It's been horrible weather, but people have been willing to stand here and wait in order to catch a glimpse of her. And I think that reflects the fact that throughout her reign, she went into people's communities, their towns, their cities. She formed a connection with people. Many people here today will have a memory of having seen her visit their home or community. And I think that feeling that they can come here and they can be here and they can witness this is so very special.
Victoria Murphy, our royal contributor, with us again this afternoon as we look at the faces of those who have gathered under a steady drizzle in London with their phones out, as you can see, documenting the moment. It certainly is an historic moment as they bid farewell to the Queen and certainly welcome King Charles III. Majestic shot there of Buckingham Palace, the final route home. There was a statement from Princess Anne, of course, King Charles' sister, the Queen's only daughter, that came out just a short time ago. She said, "I was fortunate to share the last 24 hours of my dearest mother's life. It has been an honor and a privilege to accompany her on her final journey." She went on to say, "Witnessing the love and respect shown by so many on these journeys has been both humbling and uplifting." And I love this next line. She said, "We may have been reminded how much of her presence and contribution to our national identity we took for granted." Our foreign correspondent James Longman with us as well for our coverage. And James, over the weekend, of course, it was Princess Anne and the curtsy to the Queen, and this was all part of the Queen's plan, that her daughter be with her at her side for nearly the entire journey home.
Yeah, David, I think Princess Anne really, for a lot of people, has become somewhat the sort of star so far of this. People's, really, their hearts have gone out to her. There was an extraordinary photograph of her sitting in the hearse, looking out to the crowds, her eyes with tears in them. And we're not used to that, particularly from Princess Anne. You know, she is known for her stoicism. I heard one rather moving moment along the route in Scotland. She's known to be a lover of horses, like her mother, of course. And there was a whole parade of riders who were along the side of the motorway, all on their horses, and the horses stood still as though they knew in silence, watching this motorcade go past. I mean, we're not clear about how moving every moment is going to be, and then it comes, and then it moves us. It really is extraordinary. Tonight, you know, I just watched the hearse go by. That's the first time I've seen the Queen, and I was moved. And throughout this process, I think people are discovering their feelings for the Queen. And Princess Anne said it herself when she said that we didn't realise what we had. We're now grateful for something that we've lost, and we didn't know just how great she was, and now she's gone. It's really hit home now for London. We're beginning the process of burying a piece of our history. I think the next few days are going to be absolutely extraordinarily moving, with so many people out on the streets wanting to be here to say goodbye to this woman who they clearly love.
James, it's really impossible to overstate just by looking at the crowd of people who have gathered there at Buckingham Palace. When we were there together late last week, amid news of the Queen's death, the crowds had already begun to gather. They have returned to the palace now, and as we talk about Princess Anne's words and that very humble acknowledgement that perhaps even we didn't realize how much of the national identity our mother was the foundation for. And James, we've mentioned this on the air, but it bears repeating because in the United Kingdom, more than 80% of people were born with Queen Elizabeth as their sovereign. They've only known one queen.
That's absolutely right. And it was only a few months ago we had a celebration of those extraordinary 70 years right here, the Jubilee. And she was the rock on which this country is built. Modern Britain is built on her legacy. It is a much different country to the one it was when she became queen. It's a much more diverse country. It's a multi-faith, single group. As it arrived in Britain, she became their queen. And the Jubilee was an extraordinary moment of thanks for her. I think we knew at that point that perhaps the end wasn't going to be very far away. It felt like a goodbye and an introduction to the new king, of course. I remember here, we were stood on the roundabout here, and we all sang at the end on the final night, God Save the Queen, and there were thousands singing it. It was tremendously moving. But of course, all of us are going to have to get used to singing God Save the King now. It's a very strange moment for Britain.
Yeah, we witnessed those who were there to mourn Queen Elizabeth, but also to welcome the king on his first visit back to the palace. And they were singing God Save the Queen, and then in a spontaneous moment began singing God Save the King. It's been this sort of juxtaposition of mourning the loss of someone who was so influential, who was such a symbol of strength and her steady hand for so long, but at the same time, the people of Britain making it clear that they will welcome their king. I was pausing there for a moment just by looking at the expression on that woman's face just moments ago, and that is something that James alluded to a short time ago, just the emotion on the faces of the people of throughout the UK, but Victoria in particular, the royal family. And as we await images from inside Buckingham Palace now, the royal family, tough, steady, but we have seen throughout these last several days the emotion on their faces, and it's impossible to truly imagine the fact that they're stepping forward and they're stepping ahead with this new chapter while at the same time mourning the loss of their own mother.
You're absolutely right, David, and it has been heartbreaking to see some of these images of members of the royal family in the past few days, some who are usually so stoic, so resolute. Princess Anne, a very good example of that, looking just absolutely broken and devastated, and they really are straddling this balance between mourning a personal loss, and this is a mother, a grandmother, a great-grandmother, but also understanding that the nation is grieving, and at this time they have public roles to play. And I think they are very mindful of that because, of course, that was something that was very important to the Queen. Duty first. She understood her public role, and I think part of their mourning process is making sure that they do their public roles to the best of their ability now, and that they really do her proud in the way that they present themselves in the days moving forward.
Victoria, take our audience through the image we're looking at right now, the Royal Standard at full staff above Buckingham Palace, and the Union flag remaining lowered across much of the UK. But this image right here signals the King. Not only the Queen, but the King is home as well at this moment.
This is such an important image, David, and yes, nothing exemplifies the continuity of the monarchy more than the fact that currently the Royal Standard flag is flying at full mast from Buckingham Palace. Of course, the Union flag has been lowered at half mast for most of the time, but now the King is in residence. So the Royal Standard flag is flown at full mast because it is never flown at half mast, because when one reign ends, another immediately begins. So the King at Buckingham Palace now, at his official residence, welcoming his mother's coffin with other members of the family.
And as we await images from inside the palace, I wanted to take you down to the ground level, which is where T.J. Holmes is, among the many who have gathered, the thousands who've gathered there outside the palace. And T.J., what have you witnessed there?
Don't let the scene behind me fool you now. It looks like London is buzzing again like it always does, but this area just stood still for almost 2 hours as people were just waiting for a glimpse. And for that last hour before she actually passed, because where I am here, that's where she took her last turn. Them in Hyde Park Corner, and she came around and she made that left. And the Queen made that straight shot up Constitution Hill going home, and that's what people were here to witness. The crowd was 10+ deep at times, and you talk to so many people who were here, a family that was on the train for 2 hours just to be here for a moment to just get that split second where they could applaud. I talked to a woman named Elizabeth, who was named after Queen Elizabeth, who had to be here. But something you and James were talking about, I picked up on, is that they didn't realize what they had, some people would say. And I talked to a group of young ladies, 18 years old, and one admitted, say, what did she mean to you? What did the Queen mean to you? She said, she didn't really mean anything to me. She didn't mean much to me or to my life until I saw the tributes. And then I realized just what we had and what a cultural moment this was, and how I need to now be out here for hours standing in the rain just to get a glimpse. And everyone you talk to, David, no matter what their story was or where they came from and why they were here, they always ended with the same thing. I came here to pay my respects. And they saw her turn and make that last straight shot journey home, that the Queen, not just her home that's been during her reign, that was her childhood home as well. And it kind of gives you chills, as James was talking about. You don't know what the moment is until the moment happens, but to think that this woman is going back to her childhood home to spend one more night, that moment was remarkable, kind of to take it in with a lot of Londoners and people on vacation here from Mexico or where they're from. They just wanted to be here and be a part of it, David.
Well, so moving for you to share it with us. I'm sure it's something you'll remember in the years ahead, having been there for that moment, that unexpected feeling that you have when you witness certainly someone of this stature, Queen Elizabeth II, coming home on her final journey home there to Buckingham Palace. We're going to have much more as this journey home continues. We know she's been taken to the Beau Room. Her children, King Charles, and her other children, Princess Anne, Edward, Andrew, also there, as well as the extended family. We'll have more reporting on this. ABC News Live, abcnews.com, and certainly when we're back with the entire team for World News Tonight. I'm David Muir in New York. Until then, good day.
And our coverage does continue now on ABC News Live. Thanks, David. I'm Kira Phillips. We just witnessed an extraordinary moment in history. Queen Elizabeth II, now home for the final time, arriving at Buckingham Palace. Let's take you straight to those live pictures now as we just witnessed a moment at Buckingham Palace that we will never see again. An end of an era, an end of 70 years on the throne. Queen Elizabeth making it from her home at Balmoral Estate, where she passed away peacefully, made her journey through the Scottish Highlands, through the villages, the winding streets, thousands of people lining up to greet her. Then she was taken via Royal Air Force from Edinburgh to London, where she landed not long ago. and then the caravan began. Andrew Morton joined me once again, biographer, also royal commentator for us here at ABC News. So as we watched that moment together, we saw the police, and then you saw the hearse, and we saw the Queen's coffin, and then behind her, her daughter, and the whole caravan coming through all those lines of people. I have to say, it was emotional for everybody here in our studio atop the hotel, looking at Big Ben and Buckingham Palace not far from us.
I have to say, Kyra, just thinking about the double rainbow, the full moon last night, it's kind of a mystical moment. It's been a change of seasons from the sunshine of Scotland to the dank, dark, wet London. It's a real change. It's a step change in the year, and it's a step change in the rain. And I find it hugely symbolic, and as you said, very moving.
Our James Longman, who's our foreign correspondent, joins us now. James and I, you and I were talking last night, and I remember you saying to me, Kira, keep in perspective, Queen Elizabeth II is the most famous person on this earth. I think what we witnessed over the past couple of days is a testament to that. When you think of all the people, the thousands of people from Scotland to London that have lined up to get a glimpse of her, to clap. She's been a rock of this country, James, a country you have grown up in, a queen, the only queen you have ever known.
Yes, and 80% of Britons have ever known. I've got to say, Kira, it was incredibly moving down here. Even our American friends across the way here found it moving. Everybody. I mean, it was very quiet when she came round this corner. I'm stood right in front, of course, of Buckingham Palace, the global seat of monarchy. I mean, it's the place that everyone associates with the British royal family. It's the place we associate with the Queen. That balcony behind me, where we often see them all, of course. You're watching them as they're looking up, because the flypast goes past here. You see them all lined up, and it was obviously during the Jubilee that we did manage to see the Queen at least a couple of times on that balcony as well. So this is tremendously important, so significant that she's come home. And it was that moment of homecoming which so many people around where we are here just found so moving. I mean, she actually was born and raised in a house only about half a mile of where I'm standing now. She had no idea when she was born. Her family had no idea when she was born that she would one day be queen. It was a kind of an accident of history that it passed to her father. But lo and behold, she came into Buckingham Palace to occupy this place, and for 70 years she was our queen. And tonight she came home. And that, I think, has meant that it's brought this whole moment home for Londoners especially. You know, it's all been happening in Scotland so far. I think Londoners are now waking up to the realization that the reign of Elizabeth II is done.
And James, right behind me, actually not far from Big Ben, I am seeing all the police cars, members of the military. It's starting to back up. We can see the lights and hear the sirens now. It really is quite a tremendous moment here. It gave me chills when I saw the Queen entering into Buckingham Palace there. The heads of the police officers on those motorcycles, heads bound down. Everybody out there in the rain, James, including our own TJ Holmes as well. There, right outside Buckingham Palace. TJ, you know, for you and me, I mean, James grew up here. He understands the weight of this moment. I think for you and me, being here, being a part of this, you can't but feel what this means. And it puts into perspective just this part of history that we'll take back to the States, and we'll be able to tell our kids, our friends, our family that we were here for this moment, that we witnessed what happened here this day.
But look, Kira, we've been familiar with, and you and I have been in this business a long time and covered the royal family in one way, form, or fashion. And I didn't really get it until the Jubilee here this summer when there was that huge celebration, the Platinum Jubilee for this Queen. And you got a sense at that point that this might be the last time the world is going to gather, this country is going to gather to really have something celebratory for her. And that being the last time she was even at Buckingham Palace. the Jubilee weekend until now. And where I'm standing here, Kira, this is, if you can, Steve, my photographer, show you, as you see this traffic coming around, that's a Duke of Wellington Place. Now they're coming around. If you pan to the right, she came this way and made a left onto Constitution Hill, where you see those flames. That is a straight shot to Buckingham Palace. And look, London looks like it's back to its buzzing self here, but this whole area was full of people and stood still for about 2 hours. And the crowd was 10 plus deep at times. And it stood still until people heard a siren. The cameras go up. And then they call, okay, that's not her. And then here's something else, and the cameras go up. And they were just waiting for that moment, standing out here in the rain for 2+ hours. Families, kids. The best seat in the house was sitting on someone's shoulders. A guy out here even had a step stool. He came prepared so he could see and just get a glimpse. And then when we finally knew the moment was there, Kira, is after 2 hours of waiting, just applause. And that applause went for a matter of 10 to 15 seconds, and that was it. But that's why the people were standing here. They had their own reasons, plenty of people I talked to, but it always ended with this: I'm here to show my respects. And we talk about, and I heard James say to our American friends, well, he's my British friend as well, and to talk to a couple of Brits out here, 18-year-old young ladies, Kira, get this. One admitted to me, I said, what did the Queen mean to you? That she didn't mean much of anything to me. She didn't mean anything until she passed and I saw the tributes. And that's when I finally got what this woman meant to me and to my country. And even to hear a young lady be honest about it like that, and still this whole thing, her growing up here, she was finally moved in this moment. It was just, you're right, it gives you chills, it's remarkable, but just to see for a split second, people just wanted to be here, came for hours around just to have 10 or 15 seconds of maybe just a hint of a glimpse, just to pay their respects here.
We were all a part of history and continue to be a part of history. Victoria Murphy, our royal contributor. Victoria, TJ, just put it into perspective about everybody, of all ages, of all backgrounds, from across the pond that came here to witness this moment, to witness this final farewell. She not only moved her people, she moved the world.
Absolutely, and you do get the sense being here this evening, Kira, that the eyes of the world were on this moment because the symbolism of this moment is so very powerful. The Queen coming home to the official seat of the monarchy. This is the official residence, and this is the first time that her coffin has been brought here since she died. I think another very powerful piece of symbolism that we're seeing, you may be able to just see behind me, is the fact that the Royal Standard flag is now flying at full mast from Buckingham Palace, and what that means is that the King is now in residence. And when he has not been here, we have seen the Union flag, which has been flying at half-mast, as many flags around the country have, to symbolise the fact that we are now in mourning. But the Royal Standard flag will never fly at half-mast because when one sovereign's reign ends, another one begins. And so that continuity of the monarchy we're really seeing now. And the Queen's coffin as well, draped in the Royal Standard flag as she arrived at the gates of Buckingham Palace.
Victoria, TJ, also James, thank you so much, and thank all of you for just witnessing this extraordinary moment in history with us. The next moment, her funeral, September 19th, Monday. We will take you there live as well as we leave you live in London at Buckingham Palace, where the Queen has made her final homecoming.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
in Putin's Russia.
on the ground in